A tech billionaire's wife was dying in childbirth. 12 world-class doctors had tried everything for 41 hours straight. Nothing worked. The baby was stuck, and time was running out fast. Then a 52-year-old cafeteria worker holding a food tray did something that made every doctor in that room freeze in shock. She knocked on the delivery room door and said 5 words that should have gotten her arrested. "I can save your baby." She had no medical degree, no license to practice, just hands that had delivered babies in a small town most people had never heard of. She'd worked in silence for 17 years in this hospital, but her grandmother had taught her secrets that Harvard Medical School never learned. Techniques passed down through 7 generations that could turn a baby without surgery. The billionaire nearly threw her out. His wife was minutes from emergency surgery that could kill her. But what happened in the next 10 minutes would either make this cafeteria worker a hero or destroy her completely. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about who deserves to be heard. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you catch every incredible moment of Rosa's journey. You won't believe what she does. For 17 years, Rosa Martinez had been invisible. She arrived at Chicago Memorial Hospital every morning at 5 a.m., put on her faded blue uniform, and disappeared into the background of one of America's most prestigious medical centers. She served breakfast trays, refilled coffee urns, wiped down tables in the cafeteria, and moved through hallways like smoke, present but unnoticed. Rosa had learned to be invisible long before she arrived in Chicago. It was a survival skill she developed growing up in a small town in rural Mexico, where being noticed sometimes meant becoming a target. When you grow up in a place where resources are scarce and desperation runs deep, you learn quickly that the safest way to exist is to take up as little space as possible. She'd come to America 17 years ago with nothing but $300 hidden in her shoe and the address of a cousin who'd promised her a place to stay. That cousin had moved 3 months before Rosa arrived, leaving no forwarding information. Rosa had spent her first 2 weeks in America sleeping in a church shelter, eating at soup kitchens, and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake leaving everything she knew behind. The job at Chicago Memorial had felt like a miracle. Cafeteria worker, minimum wage, no benefits, but it was legal work with a real paycheck. After 8 months, they'd even helped her get proper work authorization. Rosa had been so grateful that she never complained about the early mornings, the aching feet, the way doctors and nurses looked through her like she was made of glass. But Rosa carried something those doctors didn't have, something precious and powerful that she kept hidden for nearly 2 decades. She carried the knowledge of 7 generations of Mexican midwives, women who'd brought babies into the world with nothing but their hands, their wisdom, and their absolute refusal to let mothers die when there was something they could do about it. Her grandmother, Abuela Carmen, had been their town's primary birth attendant for 45 years. She delivered over 700 babies and lost only 4, losses that had haunted her until the day she died. Carmen had started teaching Rosa when she was just 8 years old, not because Rosa had asked, but because Carmen had looked at her granddaughter one morning and announced, "You have the hands. I can see it. The knowing is in your fingers." Rosa hadn't understood what that meant until her first birth, when she was 12 years old and her neighbor went into labor at midnight with no time to reach the clinic in the next town. Carmen had brought Rosa with her, positioned her small hands on the laboring woman's belly, and taught her to feel things that couldn't be seen. The position of the baby, the strength of the contractions, the moment when intervention was needed, and the moment when the only thing required was patience. By the time Rosa was 16, she was attending births on her own. By 18, women were requesting her specifically, walking for hours just so Rosa could be the one to catch their babies. She delivered twins during a blackout with nothing but candles for light. She turned breech babies with techniques her grandmother had learned from her grandmother, gentle manipulations that convinced babies to flip without surgery. She'd save mothers who were bleeding by using pressure points and herbal remedies that American doctors would dismiss as folklore. And then the violence had come. The cartels that controlled the region started demanding protection money from everyone, even the poorest families. Rosa's brother had refused to pay and disappeared one night. Her sister-in-law was threatened. Rosa's nephew, just 15 years old, had been recruited by force. Rosa had made the hardest choice of her life. She'd left behind everything she knew, everyone she loved, and the sacred calling that had defined her existence, to come to a country where her knowledge meant nothing and her experience counted for less than zero. For 17 years, she'd been a cafeteria worker, serving eggs and pouring coffee while doctors who didn't know half of what she knew about birth walked past her without a glance. But tonight, everything was about to change. The Whitfield baby had been the talk of Chicago Memorial Hospital for months. Marcus Whitfield was one of those tech billionaires whose face appeared on magazine covers with words like visionary and game changer. He built a financial technology empire from his college apartment, sold it for $22 billion, and used that money to launch a dozen other companies collectively worth more than some countries' GDP. His wife, Jennifer, was a former television journalist turned nonprofit founder, the kind of woman who appeared at charity galas in designer gowns while discussing income inequality and educational access. They lived in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, vacationed on a private yacht, and moved through the world with the absolute certainty that money could solve any problem. The pregnancy had been difficult from the start. Jennifer was 42, considered advanced maternal age in medical terms, and this was their first biological child after years of fertility treatments and one heartbreaking miscarriage. They'd hired the best doctors, followed every protocol, spared no expense. The nursery in their penthouse had been designed by a celebrity interior designer and filled with organic, handcrafted furniture that cost more than Rose's annual salary. When Jennifer went into labor 2 days ago, Marcus had arranged for her to deliver in the hospital's luxury birthing suite, a space that looked more like a 5-star hotel than a medical facility, complete with a birthing tub, massage chair, and mood lighting. He'd assembled what he called a dream team of obstetricians. Dr. Catherine Reynolds from Northwestern, Dr. James Park from the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Sarah Ahmed from Johns Hopkins, Dr. Robert Chen from Stanford. 12 doctors total, each one carrying degrees and credentials and reputations that had taken decades to build. And for 41 hours, those 12 brilliant doctors had been losing the battle. Rosa had been working her usual early morning shift, setting up the breakfast service in the cafeteria on the 4th floor, when she first heard about the crisis. 2 nurses had come in for coffee around 5:30 a.m., their faces exhausted and worried. "They're talking about emergency surgery," one nurse had said. "But with her blood pressure that high and the blood loss she's already had, I don't know." 41 hours, the other nurse had replied. "I've never seen a labor go this long without resolution. That baby is stuck, and nothing they're trying is working." Rosa had continued wiping down tables, invisible as always, but her hands had stilled for just a moment. 41 hours. Baby stuck. Blood pressure high. She knew these signs. She'd seen this situation before. At 6 a.m., Rosa had finished her cafeteria duties and moved to her secondary assignment, delivering breakfast trays to patient rooms on the maternity floor. It was unusual for cafeteria staff to do this work, but the hospital was short-staffed, and Rosa had volunteered for the extra hours. She'd been grateful for the opportunity. It meant she could be near the births, could hear the sounds that had once been her entire world. Sometimes, late at night when she was cleaning the maternity ward hallways, she would pause outside delivery rooms and listen to the rhythm of labor, the breathing, the encouragement from nurses, the first cry of new life. It was the closest she'd come in 17 years to being a midwife again. This morning, as she pushed her breakfast cart down the hallway toward the luxury birthing suite, she could hear the controlled chaos inside. Urgent voices, beeping monitors, and underneath it all, a woman's exhausted, desperate crying. Rosa paused outside the door, her hand on the breakfast cart handle, her heart beginning to race. She shouldn't be here. She should deliver her trays and move on. She was nobody, just a cafeteria worker with an accent and a uniform that marked her as service staff. But through that door, a mother was suffering. A baby was in danger. And Rosa knew, with the bone-deep certainty that came from catching hundreds of babies, exactly what was wrong. Rosa had heard enough through the delivery room door over the past hour to piece together exactly what was happening inside. The baby was posterior, face up instead of face down, stuck against the mother's spine in a position that made descent nearly impossible. It was a common problem, one that Abuela Carmen had taught Rosa to fix when she was just 13 years old. "You don't fight the baby," Carmen had explained, demonstrating on a laboring woman, while teenage Rosa watched with intense focus. "You dance with it. You find the rhythm of the contractions. You feel where the baby's shoulders are and you guide it. Gentle, gentle, like convincing a flower to open. Force will make things worse. Patience and skilled hands will make things right. Rosa had performed this exact maneuver dozens of times in her years as a midwife. She turned posterior babies, breech babies, babies stuck in positions that seemed impossible. Her hands knew what to do. Her fingers carried the memory of 7 generations. But she was a cafeteria worker in America. Her knowledge didn't come with a diploma from a prestigious university. Her experience hadn't been validated by the American medical system. She was invisible. Rosa set down the breakfast tray she'd been holding and looked at her reflection in the polished hospital floor. She thought about what would happen if she was wrong, if she knocked on that door and offered to help. She'd lose her job, definitely. Probably get deported. Might even face criminal charges for practicing medicine without a license. Then she thought about what would happen if she was right and did nothing. A baby would die. Maybe the mother too. And Rosa would carry that weight for whatever years she had left, knowing she could have helped but stayed silent because she was afraid. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, clear as the day Carmen had spoken those words. When you know how to help, Mija, staying silent is the same as doing harm. Rosa had spent 17 years being invisible. 17 years staying quiet. 17 years accepting her place in a world that said her knowledge didn't matter because it hadn't been learned in the right schools or certified by the right authorities. But a baby was dying in that room. And Rosa knew how to save it. She smoothed her cafeteria uniform, took a deep breath, and knocked on the delivery room door. The door opened a crack. A nurse appeared, her face showing the strain of the prolonged crisis. Yes. What do you need? I'm sorry to bother you, Rosa said in her careful English, the accent she'd never been able to smooth out, making each word precise. But I heard the baby is stuck. I think I might be able to help. The nurse blinked, clearly confused. You're from the cafeteria. Yes, Rosa said. But in Mexico, I was a midwife. I delivered many babies, many difficult births. I think I know what's wrong with this baby. The nurse's expression shifted from confused to annoyed. Ma'am, we have 12 of the best obstetricians in the country in here. If they can't figure it out, I really don't think. The baby is posterior, Rosa interrupted, knowing she was being bold, knowing she was risking everything. Face up, yes? The head is pressing on the mother's spine. This is why she has so much pain in her back. This is why the baby cannot descend. The nurse started to close the door. Thank you for your concern, but I can turn the baby, Rosa said urgently. With my hands from the outside. No surgery needed. 10, maybe 15 minutes. I have done this many times. Ma'am, you need to step back and let us do our jobs. The door closed in Rosa's face. She stood there, staring at the smooth wood, feeling the familiar weight of invisibility settle back over her shoulders. Of course they hadn't listened. Why would they? She picked up her breakfast cart and started to walk away. Then she heard it. Through the closed door, a woman's scream. Not the productive sounds of active labor, but the desperate, terrified screams of someone who'd been pushed past their limits. And underneath that scream, a doctor's voice, tight with controlled panic. We're losing fetal heart tones. We need to move to emergency C-section now. Rosa stopped walking. Rosa turned around and knocked on the door again. Harder this time. Louder. The kind of knock that demanded attention. The same nurse opened the door, her face now showing genuine anger. Ma'am, I'm going to have to call security if you don't. Let me try, Rosa said. Her voice was different now, not hesitant, not apologetic. It was the voice of a woman who'd delivered her first baby at age 12, who'd saved mothers and children with nothing but her hands and her knowledge and her absolute conviction that she knew what she was doing. 5 minutes, Rosa continued. That is all I ask. If I cannot help, then do your surgery. But if I can save this mother from being cut open, if I can save this baby from the risks of emergency surgery, is 5 minutes not worth trying? The nurse was about to refuse. Rosa could see it in her face. But then one of the doctors appeared behind her. Dr. Catherine Reynolds was in her late 50s, a renowned obstetrician who'd published groundbreaking research on high-risk deliveries. Her face was drawn with exhaustion and something else, desperation. What did she say? Dr. Reynolds asked. She thinks the baby is posterior and she can turn it manually, the nurse said, her tone making it clear what she thought of that idea. Dr. Reynolds looked at Rosa for a long moment. You're the cafeteria worker. Yes, Rosa said. But in Mexico, I was a midwife. I delivered many babies. Many difficult presentations. Do you have any medical credentials? Any formal training? I trained with my grandmother for 10 years, Rosa said. She delivered over 700 babies. I delivered more than 100 myself before I came to America. Dr. Reynolds' jaw tightened. Rosa could see the calculation happening behind the doctor's eyes. On one hand, this was absurd. You don't let a cafeteria worker with no American medical credentials touch a patient, especially not a billionaire's wife in the middle of a complicated delivery. On the other hand, they were out of options. The emergency C-section carried serious risks given Jennifer's condition. And there was something in this woman's eyes, something calm and certain and utterly confident, that spoke to a part of Dr. Reynolds that still remembered why she became a doctor in the first place. Dr. Reynolds, the nurse said urgently, you can't seriously be considering. How would you do it? Dr. Reynolds interrupted, her eyes still on Rosa. I put my hands on the mother's belly, Rosa explained. I feel where the baby's head is, where the shoulders are. Between contractions, when the uterus is soft, I apply gentle pressure to guide the baby to rotate. It does not hurt. If the baby is ready to turn, it will turn. If not, I will know in 5 minutes, and you can do your surgery. And if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, Rosa said simply. I have done this many, many times. I know what I am doing. There was a commotion behind Dr. Reynolds. Marcus Whitfield appeared, his expensive suit rumpled, his face haggard from 2 days without sleep. What's going on? He demanded. Why are we standing here talking? My wife needs surgery now. Dr. Reynolds turned to him. Mr. Whitfield, this woman believes she can turn your baby without surgery. Marcus stared at Rosa like she just materialized out of thin air. Who is she? I work in the cafeteria, Rosa said. But I used to be a midwife. A cafeteria worker? Marcus's voice dripped with disbelief. You want my wife treated by a cafeteria worker when we have 12 of the best doctors in the country in this room? Sir, Dr. Reynolds said carefully, the surgery carries significant risks given your wife's current condition. If there's any chance to avoid it. No, Marcus said flatly. Absolutely not. We're doing the surgery. I don't care about the risks. I want actual doctors treating my wife, not some. He stopped himself, but everyone knew what word he'd almost said. Rosa felt the familiar weight of invisibility settling back over her shoulders. She tried. She'd offered her knowledge. And like always, it wasn't enough. Then another voice cut through the tension. Weak, hoarse, but determined. Let her try. Everyone turned to look at Jennifer Whitfield. She was partially visible through the doorway, propped up on pillows, her face pale and drawn, her hair matted with sweat from 41 hours of labor. But her eyes were clear and focused directly on Rosa. Jen, you don't understand, Marcus started, moving toward his wife. This woman is. I understand that I've been in labor for almost 2 days, Jennifer interrupted, her voice stronger than it had been. I understand that every intervention these doctors have tried has failed. I understand that surgery right now in my condition could kill me. And I understand that this woman is looking me in the eye like she actually knows what she's talking about. She focused on Rosa, and in that moment, something passed between the two women, a recognition that transcended education and wealth and social position. One mother to another. One woman who understood suffering to another who had witnessed it countless times. You really think you can turn my baby? Jennifer asked. Yes, Rosa said without hesitation. I am certain. Then do it, Jennifer said. Please. I want to try. Marcus looked at his wife, at the doctors, at Rosa, and then back at his wife. For a long moment, Rosa thought he would refuse, would use his wealth and power to override even his wife's wishes. Then something shifted in his face. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the first time in his billionaire life that he'd encountered a problem his money couldn't immediately solve. 5 minutes, he said finally, his voice tight. You get 5 minutes. If it doesn't work, we go straight to surgery. Dr. Reynolds nodded. Agreed. but I'll be monitoring everything. If I see anything concerning, we stop immediately." Rosa entered the delivery room. It was enormous, more like a luxury hotel suite than a medical space. Mood lighting, a birthing tub, a massage chair, artwork on the walls. The medical equipment was state-of-the-art, machines monitoring every possible metric of maternal and fetal health. And in the center of all this expensive technology was Jennifer Whitfield, a woman in pain, a mother trying desperately to bring her baby into the world. Rosa approached the bed slowly, her hands already sensing what they would need to do. She could see the shape of Jennifer's belly, could read the position of the baby and the way the abdomen was carrying, slightly lopsided, with a hard spot on the left side that indicated where the baby's back was positioned. "I am going to put my hands on you now," Rosa said gently. "I will not hurt you. I am just feeling where your baby is." Jennifer nodded, too exhausted to speak. Rosa placed her calloused, work-worn hands on Jennifer's belly. Her hands were rough from 17 years of washing dishes and wiping tables, nothing like the smooth, gloved hands of the doctors who'd been examining Jennifer for the past 2 days. But the moment her palms made contact with Jennifer's skin, something happened. Abuela Carmen had called it el conocimiento, the knowing. That instant connection between midwife and mother, between skilled hands and laboring body, when information flowed both ways and you could sense things that no monitor could measure. Rosa felt the baby immediately. Head down, that was good, but rotated wrong, facing forward instead of facing the mother's spine. She felt the shoulders, the curve of the spine, the position of the tiny limbs. She felt the way the baby was wedged against the pelvis, unable to move down because the angle was all wrong. And she felt something else, something the machines couldn't detect. The baby was tired but not in distress. The baby was waiting, had been waiting for someone to help, someone to understand. Babies know things, Abuela Carmen used to say. They know when the people around them are fighting with their bodies instead of working with them. Sometimes you just have to show the baby the way. "Okay," Rosa said softly, speaking as much to the baby as to the mother. "I understand now. We're going to fix this." A contraction started, and Rosa kept her hands completely still. She felt the wave of tension move through Jennifer's uterus, felt the baby respond to the pressure, felt the involuntary pushing that Jennifer's exhausted body was still attempting. The 12 doctors crowded closer, watching with expressions ranging from skeptical to curious to openly hostile. Rosa waited patiently until the contraction ended and Jennifer's belly went soft again. Then she began. Her hands moved with practiced confidence, finding the baby's shoulder through the abdominal wall, applying gentle, steady pressure upward and to the right. Not forcing, not pushing hard, just suggesting, guiding, having a conversation with the baby through touch and pressure and that mysterious knowing that connected midwife to child. "Come on, little one," she murmured in Spanish. "Just a little turn, that's all. Just show me you can move." The 12 doctors watched in silence. Dr. James Park from Mayo Clinic was practically vibrating with disapproval, but Dr. Reynolds was watching Rosa's hands with intense focus, and Rosa could tell the woman was actually seeing what she was doing, actually understanding the technique. Another contraction came. Rosa kept her hands steady, maintaining gentle pressure, working with the contraction instead of against it. She felt the baby shift slightly, felt the head rotate a few degrees. Progress. Small but real. "It's working," Jennifer gasped, her eyes wide. "I can feel it. The pain in my back, it's less." "That's because the baby is moving away from your spine," Rosa explained, keeping her voice calm and reassuring. "We are making space. Just breathe through this contraction." "Good. Very good." The contraction ended. Rosa adjusted her hand position, found a new leverage point. This time, she applied pressure in a slightly different direction, encouraging the baby to continue the rotation. She could feel the baby responding now, could feel the small body turning in the cramped space of the pelvis. It was like coaxing a key to turn in a stubborn lock. You had to feel for the exact right angle, the precise amount of pressure. "The baby's heart rate is improving," one of the nurses announced, monitoring the fetal monitor. "Coming back up to 145. Fetal position is changing on ultrasound," another voice said, all creeping into the professional tone. "The baby's actually rotating." Marcus Whitfield moved closer, his face a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. Is it really working? Is this really happening? Yes, Rosa said simply, her hands never stopping their gentle manipulation. Your baby is turning. Just a little more now. She worked in silence for another minute, her hands reading signals that none of the expensive equipment in the room could detect. She felt the moment when the baby's head slipped past a tight spot in the pelvis, felt the shoulders realign, felt the entire body shift into the correct position. Face down now, chin tucked, ready to descend the way nature had designed. There, Rosa said, pulling her hands back and stepping away from the bed. It is done. The baby is in the right position now. Next contraction. You push, and this baby will come. Dr. Reynolds quickly performed an internal examination, her gloved fingers checking cervical dilation and the baby station. Her eyes went wide with shock. Full dilation, she announced. Baby's head is at +2 station. Presentation is now occiput anterior. She looked up at Rosa with something like awe in her expression. You did it. You actually did it. A contraction hit, and this one was different. Jennifer's body, which had been fighting uselessly for 41 hours, suddenly knew exactly what to do. The exhaustion seemed to fall away, replaced by a surge of primal power. Push! Dr. Reynolds commanded. Push now! Jennifer pushed with everything she had. And this time, the baby descended, moved down through the birth canal the way babies are supposed to move when everything is aligned correctly. Another contraction. Another push. Another foot of progress down the birth canal. The delivery room erupted in controlled excitement as doctors and nurses positioned themselves, preparing to catch this baby that they'd all thought would need to be surgically removed. Rosa stood at the edge of the room, her worn hands clasped in front of her, tears already forming in her eyes. She'd done it. After 17 years of silence, she'd been a midwife again. I can see the head, Dr. Reynolds called out, her voice filled with relief and excitement. One more push, Jennifer. One more, and your baby's here. Jennifer screamed and pushed with everything she had left. The baby's head emerged, then the shoulders, and then suddenly, impossibly, after 42 hours of labor, after 12 doctors had run out of options, after a billionaire had nearly lost everything that mattered, a baby slid into Dr. Reynolds' waiting hands. The cry was immediate, loud, indignant, absolutely perfect. It's a boy, Dr. Reynolds announced, her voice thick with emotion. You have a healthy baby boy. The baby was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, good color, strong cry, alert eyes. Dr. Reynolds placed him on Jennifer's chest, and the room full of people who'd witnessed the impossible erupted in cheers and tears and relieved laughter. Marcus collapsed into a chair, his face in his hands, sobbing like Rosa had never seen a grown man cry. Jennifer was crying too, holding her son, kissing his vernix-covered head, whispering words of love and gratitude and relief. The 12 doctors who'd spent 41 hours trying everything in their considerable medical arsenal stood in stunned silence, watching a cafeteria worker accomplish what they could not. Dr. Reynolds approached Rosa, pulling off her gloves. I've been practicing obstetrics for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like that. Where did you learn that technique? From my grandmother, Rosa said quietly. And she learned from her grandmother. 7 generations of midwives in my family. It was remarkable, Dr. Reynolds said. Truly remarkable. One of the other doctors, Dr. Sarah Ahmed from Johns Hopkins, stepped forward. I have to admit, I was completely skeptical. But what you just did, that was real skill. Real knowledge. Rosa nodded, accepting the compliment, but still feeling the weight of her position. She was still just a cafeteria worker. Still invisible. This moment would pass, and tomorrow she'd be back to serving eggs and wiping tables. But then Marcus Whitfield stood up. He walked over to Rosa, his expensive suit wrinkled, his eyes red from crying, and he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He took Rosa's work-worn hands in his and dropped to one knee. You saved my wife, he said, his voice breaking. You saved my son. I treated you like you were nobody, and you saved my entire world. Please, stand up, Rosa said, uncomfortable with the gesture. I only did what I was trained to do. No, Marcus said, standing but not releasing her hands. You did what 12 of the best doctors in America couldn't do. You have a gift. And I almost threw you out of this room, because I couldn't see past your uniform." He turned to look at his wife, who was cradling their newborn son, and then back to Rosa. "I want to hire you," he said. Rosa blinked, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "I want to hire you," Marcus repeated, "as a private midwife. For my family, for my employees, for anyone who needs your skills. Name your price. Whatever you want, it's yours." Rosa shook her head slowly. "Mr. Whitfield, I appreciate this, but I cannot practice as a midwife in America. I don't have the credentials, the certifications. What I did today, if anyone reported it, I could be arrested." "Then we'll get you the credentials," Marcus said immediately. "We'll pay for whatever education you need, whatever certifications are required. If it's a matter of degrees or licenses, I can make that happen." Dr. Reynolds stepped forward. "Actually, Mr. Whitfield, it's more complicated than that. The traditional midwifery Rosa practices isn't typically recognized in the American medical system. She would essentially need to start over, get a nursing degree, then a nurse midwifery certification. It could take years." "I don't care if it takes 10 years, Marcus said. "This woman has knowledge that clearly works. Knowledge that saved my family. That has to be worth something." "It is worth something," Dr. Reynolds said quietly. "It's worth a great deal. But there are legal and regulatory barriers." "There's always a way," Marcus interrupted. "Money opens doors. Influence creates opportunities. If Rosa wants to practice as a midwife again, I'll make it happen." Rosa looked at this powerful man making promises with such certainty, and she felt something crack open in her chest. The part of her that had accepted invisibility, that had made peace with silence, that had convinced herself that her knowledge didn't matter in this country. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why would you do this for me?" Marcus looked at his wife and newborn son, then back at Rosa. "Because 17 years ago, you came to this country with knowledge and skills that could save lives. And for 17 years, this country wasted you. We put you in a cafeteria uniform and made you invisible. That's not just wrong, it's stupid. It's a criminal waste of talent and experience." He squeezed her hands gently. "You saved my son's life today. The least I can do is help you get back to the work you were meant to do." Jennifer spoke up from the bed, her voice tired but firm. "Rosa, I don't know what your dreams are or what you want from life. But if there's any part of you that wants to be a midwife again, please let us help you. Please." Rosa felt tears streaming down her face. For 17 years, she'd been invisible. For 17 years, she carried the weight of unused knowledge, unfulfilled purpose, a calling she couldn't answer. "I would like that," she whispered. "I would like that very much." The room erupted in smiles and congratulations. Dr. Reynolds approached Rosa and extended her hand. "I'd like to be part of this too," the doctor said. "I can help navigate the credentialing process, maybe find ways to incorporate traditional midwifery knowledge into our practice here at the hospital. What you did today, that's something we should be learning from, not dismissing." Over the next hour, as Jennifer rested and bonded with her newborn son, Marcus made phone calls. He contacted lawyers, medical school administrators, licensing board officials. He moved through his world of wealth and influence with the same determination he'd shown when building his business empire, but this time focused on a single goal, giving Rosa back her calling. 3 months later, Rosa walked through the doors of Chicago Memorial Hospital wearing scrubs that weren't faded from years of wear. They were new, pristine, and they had her name embroidered on them, Rosa Martinez, midwifery consultant. The path hadn't been easy. Marcus Whitfield's money and influence had opened doors, but Rosa still had to walk through them on her own merit. She'd enrolled in an accelerated nursing program, taken intensive English medical terminology classes, and begun working with Dr. Reynolds to document her traditional techniques in ways the medical establishment could understand and accept. The hospital had created a new position for her, a hybrid role that allowed her to work alongside certified nurse midwives while pursuing her formal credentials. She couldn't deliver babies on her own yet, but she could be present, could advise, could teach. And teach she did. Dr. Reynolds had been true to her word, organizing a series of workshops where Rosa demonstrated the hands-on techniques she'd learned from her grandmother. Obstetricians, midwives, and labor nurses attended, watching in fascination as Rosa explained how to feel a baby's position through the abdominal wall, how to encourage rotation with gentle manipulation, how to read the subtle signs that indicated when intervention was needed and when patience was the better choice. Some doctors were skeptical at first. They'd spent years learning evidence-based medicine, and here was a former cafeteria worker teaching them techniques passed down through oral tradition. But skepticism faded when they saw the results. A first-time mother whose baby was stuck in a posterior position, facing 36 hours of labor or emergency surgery. Rosa placed her hands on the woman's belly, applied her gentle pressure, and 20 minutes later the baby turned. 2 hours after that, a healthy baby boy was born without surgical intervention. A mother carrying twins, both babies breech at 35 weeks. The obstetric team was preparing for a planned C-section when Rosa suggested trying external version, a technique to manually turn babies before birth. Using the methods her grandmother had taught her, Rosa successfully turned both twins. The mother delivered vaginally 3 weeks later. Word spread through the hospital, then through the Chicago medical community, then beyond. Rosa started receiving calls from hospitals in other cities, invitations to speak at medical conferences, requests to train other practitioners in her techniques. The knowledge that had been dismissed as folklore was being recognized as clinical skill. But the most meaningful change wasn't professional, it was personal. Rosa was no longer invisible. Doctors greeted her by name in the hallways. Nurses sought her opinion on difficult cases. Patients requested her presence at their deliveries. She mattered. Her knowledge mattered. Her experience had value. And she was helping to save lives again. 1 year after the night she knocked on the Whitfield delivery room door, Rosa stood in front of 200 medical professionals at the National Conference on Maternal Health, telling her story. "I was invisible for 17 years, she said into the microphone, her accented English now confident and clear. "Not because I chose to be, but because the world decided my knowledge didn't count. Because I learned from my grandmother instead of from a textbook. Because I was an immigrant, a cafeteria worker, someone easy to overlook." She paused, looking out at the audience of doctors, nurses, midwives, and hospital administrators. But knowledge doesn't require a diploma to be real. Skill doesn't need certification to be effective. And experience doesn't lose its value just because it was gained in a village instead of a university. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. "I am not saying that medical education is not important," Rosa continued. "It is vital. Science and research have saved countless lives. But I am saying that there is also value in traditional knowledge, in techniques passed down through generations, in the wisdom of women who have been catching babies for centuries." She clicked to the next slide, showing statistics from the past year, the number of surgical interventions avoided, the improved maternal outcomes, the satisfaction ratings from mothers who'd experienced Rosa's care. When we bridge these two worlds, when we combine modern medicine with traditional wisdom, everyone benefits. Mothers benefit, babies benefit, and medicine itself becomes richer, more complete. After her presentation, Rosa was surrounded by conference attendees asking questions, requesting training opportunities, sharing their own stories of traditional practices that had been dismissed by mainstream medicine. Dr. Reynolds found her during a break. "You were magnificent," she said. "I'm getting emails, already from hospitals, wanting to set up similar programs." "Good," Rosa said, smiling. "There are many women like me, immigrants with knowledge and skills that this country doesn't recognize. Maybe we can help some of them too." That evening, Rosa returned to her new apartment, not luxurious, but comfortable, a space that was truly hers. Marcus Whitfield's funding had covered her education and living expenses while she pursued her credentials, but Rosa had insisted on staying modest. She sent most of her money home to Mexico, helping to support the family she'd left behind. Her phone rang. It was her sister calling from Mexico. "Jimena," her sister said, excitement in her voice. "Did you see the article?" "What article?" "About you. It's in a Mexican newspaper." From cafeteria worker to medical pioneer, a Mexican midwife's American dream. "They're calling you a hero." Rosa laughed, tears in her eyes. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who finally got to use her skills." "You're more than that," her sister said. "You're showing people that our knowledge matters, that we matter. Do you know how many girls in our village are talking about you? About becoming midwives? You've inspired them." After the call ended, Rosa sat in her quiet apartment, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From a small Mexican village to a Chicago cafeteria to medical conferences and training programs. From invisible to visible. From silent to heard. She thought about Abuela Carmen, who taught her everything she knew. Who trusted her with the sacred knowledge of 7 generations. Who believed in her even when Rosa was just a child. "I didn't waste your teachings, Abuela," Rosa whispered to the empty room. "I finally found a way to use them." The next morning, Rosa returned to Chicago Memorial Hospital. She had 3 births to attend, 2 training sessions to lead, and a meeting with the hospital board about expanding the traditional midwifery program. She walked through the doors wearing her scrubs, carrying her knowledge, no longer invisible. And somewhere in the maternity ward, a mother was about to give birth with the help of wisdom that had traveled across borders, survived 17 years of silence, and finally found its voice. Rosa Martinez was home. Thank you for joining Rosa on this incredible journey. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below telling us what part of Rosa's story resonated with you most. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss our inspiring true stories. See you in the next video.